Welcome to Permission to Shine, the space where high-achieving women like you come to peel back the layers, overcome what's been holding you back, and rise into your most authentic, powerful self. I'm your host, Sherisse Inner Power Activation Leader and Intuitive Healer, and a woman who knows what it means to look like she's thriving on the outside, also while feeling disconnected on the inside. This podcast is here to remind you, you didn't come here to just perform, you came here to lead with your soul. Your obstacles, they're invitations to expand. And your power, it was never outside of you. It's been waiting within you all along. Each week we'll dive into honest conversations, healing insight and soul-led strategies to help you stop self-sabotaging, reclaim your light and lead your life, your business and your relationships from deep-rooted truth. So if you're ready to rise with grace, softness and fire, you're in the right place. Let's get into it. Hey everyone, so I am back with an incredible guest, and when I first met this incredible lady, instantly we just connected. It was like sparks were flying, and not just because we are both sparkly people and full of energy, but I think there was a real knowing that when you meet someone that has also walked through fire to become who they are, there's just a deep sense of like a soul level recognition. And I instantly felt that when I started speaking to Sally. And then we got the opportunity to share the space in a cacao ceremony. And it was just a real beautiful, heart opening experience. And that really set the tone, I think, for how I view Sally as a person, let alone all the amazing work that she does, the incredible mother she is, and just everything she's doing for women in the space right now. So I am really honoured to introduce to you Sally Berg.
Hello, gorgeous one. Yeah, well, I totally resonate with everything you said. For me as well, it was love at first sight. There's just, like you say, there's just such a resonance and a soul recognition when you meet someone that lights you up.
Mm.
It's just gorgeous, and I just loved your energy, and I could feel your beautiful heart and your sense of fun and all the sparkles. And I'm sat here dressed up to the nines in sparkles because I didn't thought we were going to be filming it. So I even show, and I haven't put my sparkles on for a while, so I put them on in honor of you, Sherisse.
Oh, thank you. I mean, I do have orange leggings, and I'll show you my leg there.
Oh yeah, there we go.
I'm sort of on brand, which is good.
Yeah.
I would love for you to kind of tell the audience about, who you are and what you do, and then we'll go a little bit deeper.
Beautiful, thank you. Well, I'm a midlife and menopausal midwife because what I know to be true is that there isn't a very robust map or way through midlife in Western culture. In Indigenous culture, you have elders, and in Western culture, you become elderly. Very different connotation that in our youth obsessed culture, you're parked off in the shadows, invisibilized, not valued for your wisdom and what I call QBL, qualified by life, which you are in Indigenous cultures. So, our youth obsessed culture says you're on a trajectory to becoming a dried up old bag, particularly for female bodied beings. And it's just not true. It's kept the patriarchal systems propped up, and it's time to smash through a lot of that. And I feel like I'm part of a tsunami of midlife women, particularly like 50, 60, 70, who are saying, fuck that shit, we've had enough of it. And we are going to rewrite the script. We're going to rewrite the narrative about aging. We are going to step up and be the elders that our young ones and our peers need. Be the lighthouses to show that there is a way to step into embodied, mature, turned on female leadership, because that is what the world needs right now. And that is what I do. I support women through that with my Reclaim Woman methodology, because I've walked through the fire, like you say, and I've been face down in the dirt, covered in snot and tears many times myself. So I've been initiated and tested time and time again to keep rising and stepping up, to shine brightly as I am, age 60, feeling more vibrant, alive, and turned on and sensual than I ever have in my life.
Yes. Amen to that, Sally. I just love everything about you. Like when you started to speak, I was like, yes. And I feel like for me, a really beautiful thing that I feel like is missing from a lot of people is that connection to our motherline, our indigenous, like you said, cultures, and knowing that in the Western world, a lot of what we see, know, and hear in spirituality comes from different places. And I love how you honor that always. I love
Mm,
how you spoke about the patriarchy and how, um, we're so set on being young and it's fetishized that actually getting older is such a beautiful thing. And for me, obviously, I had so many members of my family die at a young age that they never got to
mm,
experience getting older. So for me, I'm like,
mm.
what a beautiful thing it is that we get to grow and evolve and change and like with it our bodies too. And like I just think that if we were celebrated more, our bodies were celebrated more. And obviously the sexual side of things, Sally, that I think that was what you first
Hello.
told me when I first met you. And I was like, oh my gosh, this lady, yes, absolutely this part. I just think all of this is just so important. And I think that for women in their midlife and just in general, I think sexuality has become such a it was such a taboo thing that we weren't allowed to speak about. We weren't allowed to know about. It was something that men did to women and we had to
Mm,
just endure, right? Whereas I feel like there's a beautiful reclamation happening where we are talking about it and we do get to be liberated in it. And it's like, you know, F the nice girl stuff now. It's about just being fully expressed in our bodies and feeling everything. So I'm like, yes to all of the above. That is just all of the power. But
yes.
obviously, we speak about you being through the fire, and you can share as much as you want here. But I'd love for you to share like the journey it took you to get here, because I don't want anyone to think that, oh, Sally was just born really confident and glamorous and sparkly. Like, the story, everything here is about permission to shine. So I'd love to know where and how your journey started and evolved into you becoming this beautiful reclaimed woman.
Mm, thank you. That's such a gorgeous question. And I'm so happy to share that because my journey and my story is so much part of who I am. And I want this to inspire other women, particularly midlife and menopausal women, because as you say, aging, for me, aging is a privilege, not a problem. But it's been pathologized and turned into a big problem that we're supposed to be fighting, anti-aging cream. I mean, what the hell is that all about? I'm fully owning the wrinkles and lines on my face are the map of a life well lived. They tell my story. So all of that stuff that's been made wrong, we've been set against ourselves, as women, competitive, comparative, but also we've become at war with our own bodies as women, because there's always something wrong with us. We're too fat, we're too thin, we're too wrinkly, we've got too much cellulite. It's a great distraction actually from us stepping into, full-bodied female leadership, which is, I think, what the wheel is turning right now. So back to my story because I could bang on about that for days, as you can tell. So my story, yes, you're right. It hasn't always been happy, clappy, shiny unicorns and rainbows, Sally. I grew up with a bipolar alcoholic father who was violent and also sexually abusive. And it was really tough because also my mum's coping mechanism was to pretend that everything was fine. So, my nervous system took a great hit because I was a very sensitive child. And so the impact that that had on me as an adult was always struggling to orgasm or feel safe to be fully sexual in my own body. So not really feeling my own aliveness. I realize now there was a lot of armoring that had happened. And this led eventually to being quite seriously depressed for 5 years after the birth of my second child. So, from about the age of 40 to 45, because it was also a time when I started to really dig deep into my own healing journey around my father and started going to therapy. And the depression was actually one of the biggest gifts of my life. I mean, it was horrendous, but it was also a portal into the next chapter of me because it just pulled the rug from under me. I had a lot of coping strategies. I used to be called Sally Sunshine, all singing, all dancing, smiling. I had a personality, a persona, and a mask that kept me safe. which is often the way when we've experienced trauma or abuse as children or when we're younger. We put coping mechanisms in place and create protection. And so for me, that was it. It was, and bless our bodies, they're doing their best to protect us by armoring. But sadly, what this armoring does is it then reduces our capacity to feel. So we end up in this tiny little realm of coping. A lot of the women I work with, I ask, how do you feel? And they're like, I don't know. A lot of women don't know how they feel. They can't name it because they've been coping for so long. They're too afraid to feel the depths of their despair and grief. And if we can't feel that, we can't feel the heights of our ecstasy. I call that full spectrum living. And that's part of what I teach women to remember in their bodies, is how to feel, because that was my journey out of depression, was learning how to actually feel my feelings and not just be coping. And it all kicked off really the next sort of level of my healing when I was sat in a restaurant towards the end of my depression. This is when I lived in South Africa. And this woman walked into the restaurant and she was absolutely radiant. And like everyone turned to look at her. She was probably like in her late 40s. And I was just like, who the fuck is that? I need to know that woman. She was shining so brightly. So I went over to her and I was like, who are you? It was a bit like, in the movie when Harry met Sally, it's like, I'll have what she's having. I said, what's your secret? And it turned out she was an international Tantra teacher. So that's where Tantra found me. And Tantra literally saved my life. I signed up with her on the spot. I was like, whatever it is you're doing, I want it. And it's interesting because when I did some festival workshops last summer and I told this story, and lots of the women came up to me afterwards and went, that's how we feel about you. It's like I'm continuing the radiant legacy for dear Shakti, who has passed away now. But so anyway, the Tantra literally cracked me open. And for those who don't know, it's a long story, but Tantra is an ancient spiritual practice that welcomes all of our feelings and our shadows. So it does a lot. We do a lot of shadow work with difficult and bad, bad feelings in inverted commas that we've pushed away. We've been taught to push away, and it welcomes our sexuality. There's not. I don't think there's any other spiritual practices that really welcome our sexual life force in the way that Tantra does, and it's about intimacy with self and others, and opening our hearts to life, to feel everything, to keep cracking our hearts open. So I went on a retreat with her. I was scared to death, honestly. I was like, what am I doing? I nearly cancelled at the last minute. But, as I've learned over the years, it's those moments, like a threshold moment of like feeling absolutely shit scared. That's like, okay, this is when some meaningful change is going to happen. I'm going to have a growth spurt. And I came home from that just like on a bliss cloud. I was just magnetic. Like my kids were 5 and 10 at the time. The kids and the dogs were all over me. They were just like, Mom, you're so beautiful. They, well, the dogs weren't saying that, but they were all over me. And so began this new chapter. But it wasn't like so I've been practicing Tantra for about 15 years and doing lots of other healing modalities as well. And working a lot in women's healing spaces in South Africa. I was part of a red tent movement, and I became like an emotional support person in these spaces. So for 10 years, I would be part of the team supporting women, and people would often say, oh, you should be a facilitator. I'd be like, no, not for me. But I learned so much by in the field, a grassroots level, of holding women through big processes, tears, howling. And I learned through my body, and that's really what the gift of Tantra was, learning through my body. I didn't learn this stuff out of books. I learned it through my body, through my heart, through my womb space, through my sex space. It was working through me, and that's how I got the experience. And then I started to become more interested in how can I maybe work with this, because also at the time in South Africa, I became like an ally to the local marginalized communities. I did a lot of work with women and children in my local townships and founded a non-profit called Gra Valley, which supported local women to start their own micro businesses. We built a creche, Steiner creche, and I was really all about women's empowerment, like big time. So there's so many different parts of me that have woven together to bring me to where I am now. And I used to be a senior fashion editor at British Elle magazine in London back in the day. I've had quite a wild and checkered past, but all of my skills are now woven together
Yeah.
with this new offering, Mature Eros, that
Mm.
I launched a year ago.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love that. And I wanted you to keep talking because I was like, say more. 'Cause I was just enjoying this so much. And I think I knew a lot of your story already from obviously us being in rooms together and speaking together and all of the things. But hearing the layering is so beautiful. And I feel like me and my friends, my spiritual friends, we talk about how life is almost like a tapestry, like you were saying, the
Mm,
weaving parts are all mesh together to make the full story. And if you take one part away, the whole thing doesn't work. And so it's so beautiful to hear your story and for me to be able to weave the gaps, from where I
yes.
didn't know the spaces that were there. And I love your connection to Tantra. And I that was a lot of what you said there is something that I resonate with completely. And I feel like, especially the armoring and not being able to
Mm,
feel, that was something that I really noticed for myself that um I always talk about the biggest dance job I had was a Marvel film, and it was everything I wanted to do and more. And then I get on set and I'm numb. I'm like, wow,
mm,
I should feel more here because this is everything I've ever wanted to do. And I feel nothing. And so that was like the first sign for me, oh, something's not quite right. But even when you talk about pleasure and all those things and stopping yourself from having an orgasm and things like that was such a big part of my story as well because I didn't know like how to let go because I was
yeah.
controlling everything that I couldn't
Yeah.
just allow myself to feel. And obviously the moment that you open that door, it's like, wow, it's all wild now. We just don't care. Do you know what I mean? And I want us to talk about that more because even with my clients, I ask them, I'm like, when was the last time you had an orgasm, guys? Because that is also part of your emotional regulation. Because if you're not doing that, you're not regulating yourself. You're not getting those bits. Do you know what I mean? And I think that what I'm learning more and more, the safer I feel in myself, the safer I feel with the masculine, is that when we're in that flow state, we should be able to feel wild and crazy and all of those emotions, these animalistic feelings that we are told we shouldn't be. Like when we're saying about being the good girl or you're all this stuff, it's like, no, we get to be wild and crazy and all of those beautiful things that we've been told we don't get to be ferocious and all of these like yummy emotions, right? That we've
Yeah.
hidden and also the shame of that society and patriarchy's put on us as women. They want us to be that, but they also don't want us to be that. And I think that when we say, actually, like fuck all of that, and deal with the darkness that we have within us, like you said, which is so important, and we alchemize that, what we find is self-acceptance. And I feel like that is just oozing
Mm,
at you, which is beautiful. And I feel like being in that space myself, I so receive you always because I'm like, yes, like when you find people that are there too, you're like, oh, isn't it such a peaceful space here? Like when we're living and coexisting and talking in this energy, it's like this is what peace feels like. And it's yes,
mm,
up and down and a roller coaster, and there's all these elements that come into it. But generally, when the baseline is this, everything gets to be from here. And I just, yeah, that was all so lovely.
mm.
Everything you said there was amazing. And I just, yeah, can't wait to hear all about more and more. But
Beautiful.
I feel like this is a good point here to ask you because I know that, I mean, I feel like you might have touched on it, but it might be another moment of when in your story, in your life so far, do you feel like you really gave yourself that full permission to shine?
Yeah, that's a beautiful question. And that really links very nicely into sort of a more recent history because as a follow-up from what happened after the Tantra retreat, kids, dogs, I was magnetic. They were couldn't get enough of me. But my husband, I was married for 35 years and we had a beautiful marriage for a lot of that time. But I came back from that Tantra retreat and he went. So what was magnetic to others sort of repelled him. So there's something about my expansion that created a contraction in him. So that was the beginning of the end of our marriage. So the last 8, 10 years, it was like a slow death. of him pulling away emotionally. And so, sort of fast forward a bit to 3 years ago, we moved back from South Africa to England. And I still thought I was growing old with that man, even though we hadn't had sex for 8 years. We just slid into sort of being companions. And I think that's quite common for a lot of women my age in long term relationships. And I'm not judging that, because for some people that works. It's like, okay, we're just going to be mates. Fine. But when he revealed that he hadn't been in love with me for years, I was like, oh, do I want to spend the rest of my life with someone who doesn't really love me anymore? And I just thought, fuck no, I don't. So we very amicably set each other free. So this was like 3 months before we moved countries. It was just like, so that was like a big dark night of the soul for me, because we moved countries. It was also, we also co-ran a very successful photography business. It was the end of that. I moved back to England, to a town where I'd never even visited in my life. Had to start from scratch at the age of 57. So yeah, literally I was face down in the dirt, covered in snot and tears, broken. And again, it was the biggest gift of my life, because on the eagle's view, I knew that everything had to die. All familiar friends, community, structures, work. I was just stripped to the bone. And I knew on a spiritual level that all of that had to die in order for me to rise like the phoenix in the flames from the ashes of that life, which is what I've been doing for the last 3 years. It was like a total rebirth. And so that was that moment of choice. It's like, well, I can either really go down with this, or I can choose to pivot and create a whole new life on my terms, and it coincided with going to another Tantra retreat where I had a big Kundalini awakening in my body of pleasure, just like I'd never felt in my life, like all this pleasure moving through my body in waves. And I was just like, what the actual, I was like, now I understand what everyone's going on about. But the beauty of that as well was that it was for me. This pleasure in my body wasn't about grabbing a partner or having sex with somebody. This was like rocket fuel for life. It plugged me back into my intuition, my purpose, my energy, my vibrancy. My heart cracked open, and I just felt, and have felt since, amazing. Like, sexy at 60. I feel more vibrant and alive than I ever have in my life. And that is thanks to sexual life force energy. And as you rightly said, Sherisse, there's so much shame around that as females. We've carried it since the Romans invaded, when they invaded and said, we're going to make female bodies sinful and shameful. They saw the midwives, the village oracles, the healing women. They started the witch hunts. So they started persecuting women for their life force energy and their sexuality, the women in the priestesses in the temples. So we still carry those wounds, that witch wound from that time, and shame around our sexuality. So that's what I'm really passionate about as well, is reframing that, because our pleasure is for us. Pleasure is not frivolous. It is essential to the health and well-being of female bodies. And it's for us to cultivate that. Again, we've been conditioned as women to outsource our pleasure, to wait and think it's coming from a lover, from another, from a Gucci handbag, whereas actually it's an inside job. When we start working with pleasure from the inside out, it is like this magic medicine in our bodies. It resets our nervous system. Oxytocin reduces cortisol. Most women are running on cortisol. Start doing pleasure practices and self-pleasuring. Even, just starting to touch yourself beautifully. It doesn't even have to be sexual. Just stroking your body, self-soothing. Start cultivating that oxytocin, because it's like the best healing medicine we've got.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes us more, again, I did a post about it this morning about how, we don't need to be stronger as women. We know how to do strong.
Absolutely.
We need to be softer.
Completely.
But when you say soft, people think, oh, that's weak or fragile. Fuck no. I call it soft power. Because this softness that's cultivated from the inside out through pleasure means we are more resilient. we're more vibrant, we're plugged into the eros of the earth, we're
Mm,
plugged into that deep feminine wisdom. I call it my pussyometer. It's like, that she's like the oracle these days.
mm.
It gets us out of our busy minds and into our bodies, and our bodies hold so much wisdom we've just forgotten.
100%. You are speaking all of my language, Sally. I'm there. Yeah, I'm just nodding like a nodding dog because I just anymore. Like this is everything I speak about. And I think that, what you're speaking about there is the embodiment, right? It's like
Yes.
getting
Yeah.
out of your head into your body, feeling all the feelings and being fully expressed. And I think that's all,
Yes.
isn't it? Like we're all searching for these like accolades and like happiness on a pedestal, but it all starts inside, like we said. Like it's just here always, like this
Mm.
beautiful connection to ourselves, to the divine, which is one and the same for sure. I just, yeah, everything you're saying, I'm like, yes, it's just all the good stuff. Put this on a plaque and let's all read it every day because it's so needed, isn't it? And I feel like,
Yeah.
especially women in midlife that have lived their lives for their kids, for other people, for society or whatever. I feel like
Yes.
now more than ever they need your work because it's like, gosh, if
Yeah.
I think about all the women that I meet that like, the lady at the coffee shop or the woman at the gym behind the desk, it's like all these women, I think, gosh, if they had access to this and knew about this, it's like this is what we're living, right? And we're teaching it because we've been through this experience. And I just think, yeah, there's so much power in it. And especially, like you said, that sexual connection and that is the divine feminine. We
Yeah.
that is part of it. You cannot be love and light and not shadow and deepness and darkness. There's no in between. It's the same. And I think
No.
that the more we get used to corruption and chaos and being okay with that, the
Yeah.
more joy and happiness we will have as a byproduct of feeling and accepting it. And I'm like, yes, this is
Yes. Yeah. Exactly that. Because you're exactly right, Sherisse. Because what I've been learning as I've been launching Mature Eros and through life is, particularly with living in these extraordinary times of chaos and change, it's so easy to get hooked into the drama, the violence, and it's not to say we bypass that. Yes, we acknowledge it. Yes, we feel it. But if we're too in it, it just takes us down and we become victims and we just collapse. And that's really what a lot of the mainstream media and the in inverted commas all the clowns and powers that be that are running the show would want us to do, because they don't want us to be powerful. They want us to be all collapsed and beholden to them. So one of my missions and what I know to be true is, okay, there's no outer safety in the world for female bodies, period. We know that. So, and we have particularly sensitive nervous systems. Our nervous systems are different to male nervous systems. So, we're often used to being in a state of hypervigilance, bracing, feeling out for actual or perceived danger. So this has a great effect on how we feel. And then it obviously is pumping out the cortisol at the same time. So what I feel is one of my superpowers is I support women to create inner safety, because once we start creating inner safety, it's like we create our own sanctuary. We become
absolutely.
sovereign queens in our own bodies because we learn how to manage our own nervous system to keep it in a more easeful state. And I'm not saying, I'm not a big fan of this whole like calm down, regulate your nervous system. Yes, we ease and reset our nervous system, but we also need our animal instincts, like you said. So I'm not about like calming everyone down. Like, for fuck's sake, women have been calmed down for centuries. We don't need to be calmed down. We need to learn how to create inner calm, but we also need to be activated in our wild jaguar
Mm,
animal instincts, that mean that we can spot a predator or we can feel danger. So that's what I work with. It's a titration between easeful state and then alert and animal, so that we can respond. And, that's for me, like where the dancing and the movement and the shaking comes in as part of my practices, because that inner safety and activation, and then coupled with the cultivating the oxytocin, is like a winning combo in
yeah.
female bodies, because we're creating activation, we're creating calm, and we're creating pleasure. So mix all of those together, and it's like, you feel amazing. and you feel
Yeah.
powerful and totally in your body. Like you said, this embodiment. Again, most
Mm,
women think embodiment is going to the gym. It's nothing to do with that.
mm,
Yes, we need to do those things as well, or the strength training, whatever, but creating this softness and resilience inside and
mm.
this responsiveness is for me key. And I've just got all these visions of how I want to create like a curriculum to take into schools for like teenage girls. I mean, you're never going to bring sexuality into schools, it'd be a minefield.
Oh
But I
gosh.
feel like there's a package that I could create which is all about supporting girls to learn what their nervous system is, how to manage their nervous system, how to learn about boundaries, how to say their no, like an embodied no, so that that particularly if they choose a male partner, that the men can feel that, and the men around them can, predators will not be attracted to girls and women who have been taught this. And that's
Yes.
again the problem. We have not been taught this. It's not taught
That's
in fucking schools. We're taught how to put a condom on a banana. It's like, great. Is that it? There's nothing around embodied empowerment, intimacy. I think it's getting better. I don't know because my kids are older, but well, I
well,
hope it
this
is
is
getting better.
Sally. So I've got a program I take into schools and teach girls.
Oh,
Yeah, so
really? Oh, I've got goosebumps.
yeah, when you're saying it, I'm like, that's what I'm doing right now. And actually, a lot of what you're talking about,
Amazing.
our work really like crosses over because that's exactly what I'm teaching too. This, like we said, the ability to be able to find the calm in the chaos, but equally, when we need to be a roaring wildfire, we are unapologetic about it too. And I think this is something I talk about is like we're always this little flicker of a flame. And sometimes that flame is like a candle and it's delicate and it's
Mm,
beautiful and it's warm. And then sometimes we up the gear and it takes everything out as a wildfire. And I think we have to be all of it. So I think when we're always
exactly.
flame, we know how to manage that flame. And then we're not reactive. We are leading with our own intuition, our own discernment. So if we want to
Yes.
raise, we can. If we don't have to. And I think that for me is power. And I feel like I've noticed myself a lot recently. When there's been things shifting maybe in the industry or politically, and I used to react to those things, I now choose whether I want to say something or not because I'm like, what is this going to do for me? If I actually react right now to this and create a snowball of something I don't particularly want, is it worth it? Right. And I think that
Mm,
being a young girl that always spoke up and was considered aggressive, that was as a reaction. That wasn't because I was
yes.
in my own truth and my own power. And I so
Mm,
I feel like this is where we get to this discernment, this seat of the soul, where we get to observe
yeah.
ourselves. And like we said, embodied power. Like my first title was inner power activation leader because that was what I was taught.
Love that.
So I'm on
Yeah.
your wavelength, Sally. So on your wavelength. So say
Oh, and what
more.
I'm hearing as well is what I'm hearing from you, Sherisse, is that, which I love, and again, I'm just really applauding and celebrating this, is, this work teaches us how to be responsive rather than reactive. And there's a huge difference because we are a force of nature. And yes, we've been tamed and calmed down for a long time, but our wildness and our fierce expression, when that's allowed to come through, it's not at other people. It's not that we're like vomiting that onto other people, because that's what we learn as well with this discernment, is how do we express our anger in a safe way that's not toxic and projecting onto somebody else. And I do a lot of work with that as well, the sacred rage piece of how do we embody and express our anger in a healthy way that allows it to move through our bodies, but it's not harming
Yes.
somebody else, and how we can actually, be in our anger and say a fierce no to
Mm,
someone if they're transgressing our boundaries. But we can do that from an embodied place, and it's
yes.
a very different energy, isn't it?
Absolutely that. Yeah. I think when you're in your own power, there is no bleeding. Whereas when
Yes.
you're in reaction, you're almost like pouring out your power onto everything else. So I feel like that
Mm.
exactly is it, isn't it? Is that when we are embodied in our actions and what we're saying and doing and intentional with it, it makes it it's not about them, it's about us, like you're saying. So yeah, I completely, and I think that this is something that I was thinking about actually last night is about, even when you get into altercations with people or arguments, it's like my and I do lots of conflict navigation, my response to this always is that accountability is always the place to lead from, because
Mm,
people can blame you for things that you have or haven't done, all of the things. But the moment you take accountability for the part that you played, you take the power back to you. Because it's like,
yeah.
okay, I can hear that you're angry about this. The part I played in this was this. So if you're, however you perceive that is up to you, but this is the part I played. And then it takes the shame and blame out of everything, because we're like, no, 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 this is where I'm at with this.
Mm,
And again, we're accountable. We're acknowledging other people's pain and things like that, but we're not owning it. And I think that's sometimes what we've been done, hasn't it, as women, is like we're given all the pain, we're like offloaded onto, and then we don't know how to manage that. So it's like, actually, when you create that boundary for yourself of like, no, no, this is the bit I was in, then we stop
mm.
getting bled onto.
Yes. Yeah, that's beautiful because yeah, we have our part to play, and when we own our shit, that's also incredibly empowering because then we're not going into blame
Yes,
all the
exactly.
time, and that's often a hurt response is that we start pointing fingers and blaming others. So,
Absolutely. No,
yeah.
we could talk about it all day. I know we
I
could.
know.
But I would love for you to tell us more about your offering, because obviously you've mentioned it, and I want you to go into more detail, the type of woman you're looking for this offer and what it entails.
Brilliant. Thank you. Well, I loved it. It was so touching what you said earlier about, the women that you encounter in your life, whether it's, the lady at the gym or in the local shop. And it feels to me like, what I feel is that we're in a midlife health crisis for women. With the generation of women, we wanted it all, we got it all, but then we had to do it all. So most women hit perimenopause like a brick wall, and it's not surprising. We've all seen Motherland. It's like frightening. But, you know, if women chose to have kids, they might have done it a bit later. They've probably got aging parents that they're taking care of, and they've got a demanding full time career and perhaps a bit of social activism on the side. I mean, is it any wonder that the wheels are falling off? So, what I have put together is, I would say my ideal client is either a midlife or menopausal woman who just wakes up and thinks, well, who the fuck am I? I've completely lost myself in life because I've been caring for others, I've been serving others, I've been putting everyone before myself because again that's part of the conditioning is to put everyone else before ourselves and they've just become lost and run down and they've lost their spark and their essence. And so that is my absolute passion is supporting women who feel like they've just lost themselves in the busyness of life and caring for others to reclaim themselves because it is possible. Yes, we've all got busy lives, but with a bit of care and attention, that's why I've put my programs together, the Reclaim Woman, particularly for high achieving busy women, because it's like I've got these practices that I call love bites. And these are like little nibbles of practices that you weave into your busy day. So a couple of minutes here and there to reset your nervous system, put on a banging tune, dance to Beyonce while you're making the lunch boxes. It's all about movement and shaking things up a bit and then also being more devotional to yourself, coming back to reclaim your body, starting to learn how to love your body again. I suffered from body dysmorphia for decades. It's only been in my 50s that I've really sort of reclaimed and owned my body. I'm a big curvy woman, a sort of 16, 18, and most of my life I've been thought I'm fat, ugly, and unlovable. So that's another piece that I bring in is supporting women to learn how to love and nurture the mature body that they have. And I'm not saying, don't go to the gym, don't do the strength, you need to do all of that stuff as well. But with my practices, what it does is because you're starting to plug into your own essence again, into your own heart, you start to make better choices. You start to want to eat better. You start to make better choices in your relationships, your loverships, your boundaries become stronger. So this is like a total reclamation. And I feel like this is where women need to start. Because without this foundation of reclaiming of who we really are, we're always going to be a bit lost and not know who we are. And this is an opportunity. Menopause is a powerful rite of passage. It's not a condition to be fixed or feared. But there's so much fear mongering out there projecting onto us. Again, it's a bit like 80s diet culture. It's now the wellness industry would have us believe that there's always something wrong with us, that we need to take this supplement, that supplement. And yeah, take the supplements, but there's nothing to fix, actually. We're not broken. We've just neglected ourselves often.
Yeah.
That's what I think is really key to it, is that a lot of midlife and menopausal women have neglected themselves, and
Hmm.
they've been conditioned to be looking after everybody else. So then the wheels fall off. And so that's my passion, is to support women with these programs, which have all these different pillars of rest, restoration, devotion to self. I start my programs with the invitation is to go and buy yourself a bunch of roses. So
Yeah,
you
that's
go and
lovely.
buy a bunch of roses, and then you start the practices, and we have I do group programs and one-to-one, but it's about learning how to be present with ourselves, to get
Mm.
into nature more, to learn, to awaken our senses. We start with awakening our senses, sight, touch, sound,
Mm.
hearing. I think that's all of them. But, again, we've become shut off to our actual senses, and sensuality is about awakening our senses. So once we start awakening our senses again, then we start to feel again. And then we look at things that are coming up. It could be shame and trauma. I'm trauma and trauma and nervous system informed. So, I have plenty of experience with holding women through big processes, because things
Mm.
are going to come up. And I
Absolutely.
called my 40s the age of reckoning. And it
Mm.
is that, and that's the thing. It can be very scary to go through these rites of passage without somebody to hold your hand a bit and support you and hold the space for you. And so that's what I feel. I created like a map, a
Yeah.
methodology through midlife and menopause, a map that really works, this robust map of self-inquiry, of movement, of breath work, journaling. It's a very nuanced program that includes a lot of different things. I call it Sal's greatest hits because I've sort of harvested all the different tools and practices that have really supported me. So it's like I've cherry picked all the best stuff and
Mm.
put it together, and get extraordinary results. I have women, one woman I worked with earlier this year. She was just feeling really like dull and switched off to life. She'd sort of not having intimacy with her husband. She'd lost her spark, and I just bumped into her and we chatted one day. She didn't know me, and again it was a bit like me with Shakti. She was like, "Oh, I'm signing up on the spot." And we
Yeah.
had this beautiful month together in our one-to-one program, and she just absolutely blossomed. She remembered who she really was. She reconnected with her husband. She became more playful with her kids. It's there's playfulness and joy in this as well, and it's not a chore. That's what I love about my programs. It's not something on the to-do list of a bit like, oh my God. It's really fun. And yeah,
Yeah.
there are difficult, tender moments, but those are the moments that we move through as a threshold moment. Then we have a little growth spurt, because things have to die.
Yeah.
That's what menopause is about. The old you, there's parts of you that are not serving you anymore. And that is often, like you spoke of earlier, like the good girl, the people pleasing, the fawning, the, being a martyr, caring for everyone else before yourself. A lot of those archetypes need to die for you to step up into this next iteration. That this could be the most vibrant, beautiful chapter of your life. And I'm living proof of that.
Yes, absolutely. And like what I love about this is it's never too late. It's
It's
never
never too late.
embark on this journey and to live fully and to choose yourself. Like, I think we all bloom at different times and we all go through seasons where we have the inner winter into the spring to the summer, and then we go through the autumn again. And I think that no matter what stage of life you're at, you are exactly living proof that you can be bold, beautiful, sexy, and all of the things when you choose to be, right? So choose
Yes.
for it, ladies. Like, where can they find you,
Choose
Sally?
it. Yes, choose it, queens. And it's interesting you say it's never too late, because that's often what I end my keynote speech with, is like, it's never too late to create the life of your dreams, the life you desire, desire-led living, you know.
Yes.
That's what it's all about. Yeah. So you can find me on Instagram, mature.eros, E-R-O-S. I'm sure you'll put the links in as
Yeah,
well. So, and I've got my website on there, which again is mature-eros.co.uk. So, yeah, come and find me, come and have a chat. And I'm always open for questions and inquiries, and I do like a free one-to-one call with an embodied meditation session, because I think it's often hard for women to understand what I do. And so I like to give them a little taste so that they feel it. That's how I've ended up with clients, is when they feel it, they're like, oh, okay, now I get it.
Really, that's magic. And take Sally up
Yeah.
on that for sure, because yeah, I know how amazing you are just from being your energy. So yeah, can't wait to see the revolution that you're building, Sally. I can't wait for it to just keep evolving in the most magical way, because it is so needed. And I think that, us reclaiming that power as women, like we said, at any age, at any point of your life, I think that is just, yeah, the most wonderful thing we can gift ourselves. So thank you so
Absolutely.
much for being you, for doing everything
Thank you,
you do, and
Sherisse.
obviously
Well,
for
thank
joining me
you.
today. But just to round off, obviously, I would love for you to share just a message on your heart, your soul to soul message.
Well, to be honest, it was going to be it's never too late. And you said it, and that is my mantra. It's never too late. I just want to really speak to all the women out there who maybe are struggling in midlife and menopause, who are feeling like, they're in decline, that it's all over. I would just say it's not true, and it's never too late. Yeah, it might be a bit crunchy and stretchy to do the inner work that's needed, but it is so worth it. It really is. Never
Absolutely.
too late.
Never late. Amen to that. Thank you so much, Sally.
Thank you, Sherisse.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode. Please do like, follow and share with a woman that you know needs to hear these words today. The more women that get to listen, the more impact and change and transformation I get to make into this world, and the light in you shines on others. So sharing that forward is absolutely the mission of this. This is how we all give and get and receive the permission to fully shine. I also have some really incredible things happening this year. I'm hosting the second She Rises event in April. So if you want to find out more about that, click the link in the description. And I'm now newly launching my first ever group program that is called Unforgettable. And it's taking you from performing visibility to embodied authority. So whether that's host your own podcast, or being on stage, or being the leader of your field, and you're ready to fully embody this version of you that has this dream and ambition, that the limiting beliefs, the childhood experiences, the generational trauma that has stopped you and prevented you from fully stepping into who you came here to be. This is the space where we get to write a new story, a new chapter in your life. And I'm so excited to hold that space for you. And as always, if you're looking for one-to-one guidance and support, drop me a message, because there's always spaces available for you. I'm sending you so much love.